Hi, everyone, and welcome to Unpacking Possibility. I'm Tracy Stein, and I am so incredibly excited to introduce you to an incredible woman, a Renaissance woman, and a good friend, Leslie McGuirk. Now, if you look Leslie up, you will be as impressed as I am. She has done everything, and she seems to do everything well. So we're going to learn a lot more from her. She's a successful author of both children's books and books for adults. She's an incredible artist. She's a skilled and successful workshop presenter and motivational speaker. She's an astrologer and a medium. And you would say, how can somebody be so good at all of these things? But in the next half hour, 45 minutes, or however much time we take together today, you will find out exactly why Leslie is so inspiring. So without further ado, Leslie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. You really are an incredible, and you're an incredible manifestor. I forgot to add that, and I'm sure there's more. But you're just an all around. I want people to know right off the bat that you are someone that if people met you virtually or in person, they would feel like they knew you right away because you were so genuine and you really connect with people and animals on a different level, on a deep, authentic level right away.
Yeah, and I think authenticity is extremely rare right now. We have, with women, so many getting plastic surgery at young ages and people always trying to be something. And we've become very self-conscious. And that is a killer for the spirit to be self-conscious, but it's hard not to be because there's so much pressure to be perfect all the time. So that's why I did that TED Talk, The Importance of Being Wrong, because the best things about me and the best things about any one of us is our imperfections and the places where we've suffered. I remember once reading something about how if a man wants to figure out a way to a woman's heart, it's by finding out what makes her sad. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I know that's pretty intense, but figuring out where her sorrow is, you can then connect with her. And if she feels safe, then when you're vulnerable, then you're actually who you really are. So when you march from that place of vulnerability, that's scary to do. Very, very scary. But I think I've done so much of that now it's become my predominant trait, which is why people react to it so strongly because it's not that common.
I would love for you to talk more about your TED Talk because as I've mentioned to you before, it's actually, I think it's my favorite TED Talk because it is so genuine and it is so authentic. And I think one of the issues that it touches on, which you just referred to, is this feeling of, especially when we're younger, not knowing, kind of finding our way and learning how to accept ourselves. And a lot of that is based on feedback we get from other people. And your TED Talk, The Importance of Being Wrong, tells the story, tells your narrative of how, you got feedback that we've all gotten when we were younger, right? That was completely unhelpful, other than that it made you more determined to just be and embrace who you are.
Very, very difficult journey to do that because for most of my childhood, teens and 20s, even part of my 30s, the voice that was inside my head didn't have a lot of very nice things to say about myself because most of what I had heard through my entire life was that I was never good enough. Oh, you can't draw. Your sisters are better than you at this. These people are prettier than you are. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was so bad, the things that were said to me that I literally, Tracy, kept a notebook when I was like 14 years old. And I wrote down how many times something was said to me that was actually positive. And I think at age 14, I had collected 2 sentences. And one was just this friend of my parents coming to the house and saying, "Oh, that turtleneck looks good on you." And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Somebody actually said something nice to me."
No.
I mean, it's really sad, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who has never really had many people say things that actually make you feel like you matter. And so I'm kind of an expert at understanding how to make people matter because of what I've gone through. So that's what I want to tell people, is that all the things that people criticized me for were actually some of the best things about me. But when you're little, you don't hear that. All you hear is, you can't draw, you don't know what you're doing, you're never going to make it. That's all I heard all the time. So I pretty much lived most of my life walking around on eggshells, wondering when someone was going to say something about whatever it was that I was doing that wasn't right. And so in my TED Talk, I sort of make it funny, but my writing teacher, mentor was J.P. Donlevy, who wrote The Ginger Man. I don't know if I ever told you that story, but he's an Irish novelist. Anyway, he used to always tell me, he said, Leslie, writing is about turning your worst moments into money. And I totally know that that's true. Like, that's what I've done.
I never heard that.
Isn't that a great line? So yeah, it's very true. So all of those things that made me an empath, that made me highly sensitive, I still was hanging on to something inside of me that I knew was my true self. And when I finally got brave enough, because of certain people like J.P. Donlevy and others who saw the whimsical, creative part of me, I was able to finally let that out. Then all of a sudden I started standing more in my truth about who I am. But the most frightening thing in the world to do is to walk out on a stage and be yourself. It's much easier for an actor to play a role than to be themselves.
Absolutely. And I think, something you said earlier kind of fits in with that, because it's like, in a world where, especially now, everything is so virtual, right? On phones and on apps and on computers. I sound like an oldster, but there's this pressure to almost like to be good enough, but to fit into a certain mold. And it's a different version, and maybe a more kind of pervasive and 24/7 version of other people weighing in, sometimes in a really unhelpful and hypercritical way. Right. And reinforcing feelings of people being not good enough. But what you're talking about, I think so many of us can relate to, because sometimes I think some of the criticism was just, that's who people were, right? And that's how they were raised, and they just carried that forward. Some of the criticism is people being mean-spirited. I don't know what percentage. And some of it is this misguided belief I think a lot of people had back in the day that, by criticizing everything somebody does wrong, you will steer them on the quote right path or help them succeed. That kind of tough love, or you should do this better. And it's not helpful. But I remember from your TED Talk, even talking about a teacher who saw you as a young child drawing, and your drawing, if I remember correctly, did not have a belly button, or did have a belly button. Sorry, the drawing of your person had a belly button.
Yes.
And so tell us about that, because I think that's so poignant.
So I was in second grade, and I was laughing because I thought this drawing was funny. And the teacher wanted to see what I was laughing about. And she saw this offensive piece of artwork, grabbed my arm, took me to the front of the class, held up the little drawing, pointed to the belly button, and said, I don't want to ever see anyone do this ever again.
And drawing a person.
No, not a person wasn't the problem. It was putting the belly button on the little boy. I mean, I was drawing kids at the beach. Yeah. And I'll never forget the drawing, because I remember going back to my seat, like shaking, and I was huddling in my little chair like, oh my God, I'm never going to draw again. I'm not going to show anyone my artwork, and I'm never going to draw again. And that's what I kept doing. And then I remember being in a school play the year before that. I just am having this memory right now where I wanted to be the lead rabbit in the play, and instead I was relegated to the chorus, and I was just a lowly little butterfly in the background. And I got so mad that I was ignored again. I wasn't seen, that I painted my butterfly wings all black.
Oh my God.
So that happened at age 6. I was painting butterfly wings black. Everyone wants to be seen. This is not like I was an egomaniac at age 6. No. Every child wants to be seen. They want parents to look at them and look at what I did, Mom. Look at what I did. Yeah. And that's normal. Okay, that's just so healthy to want to be seen, and we all want to be seen. And I think that's the key thing about being a human, is that you want to be seen for being good at something or being known for something. I think we all have that desire.
And being inherently good and worthy, and
Yes.
having somebody just be delighted in you as you are.
Yes. Even if you're a janitor at the local school or you're serving food at a cafeteria, those people are heroes to me, because many of those people do their job with a smile. They make everyone happy all day long. And it's like, we can't all be Bill Gates or, Warren Buffett. We can't all be these superstar, super wealthy people.
Right. But it's so interesting because I remember, so you and I met, I'm going to say like 20 years ago now.
I know.
At Rancho La Puerta. And I am somebody who's taken a million workshops, and it's rare for one to stand out like yours did. And I found it so engaging, inspiring. It was probably 2 hours at most. And, your creativity and your willingness and desire to make things light and playful, but meaningful, and let each participant be the star in that workshop, by exploring and doing something creative. That really stuck with me. And you're manifesting before people were even talking about it. And I don't even know if you used that word then, but just the journals and the writing exercises and your examples of the things you have manifested. And, you were saying before, out of these difficulties, you really have reached inside you, and you have said, this isn't lead, it's gold. And I am going to, put this out into the world. And so I'd love for you to tell listeners some of the things you've been able to do despite a lot of naysayers, because everybody can relate to people not getting them. And most of us let it keep us small. But that's not what you did.
Well, I would say for a good period of time, my children's books, before they were published, were rejected. Some of them were rejected over 150 times. I was rejected for 13 solid years before I got published. Most people can't handle that many years of rejection. I've been rejected more than Dr. Seuss. I think he was way up there, but I've now sold over 2 million children's books around the world. So nobody was correct about any of it. And I think I'll never forget where the turning point came for me with finally getting a publisher. I was in Bologna, Italy, at a children's book festival trying to find a publisher overseas because I wasn't having any luck in the United States. And I found an American agent who loved my work and said she would take me on. But she said, Leslie, we need to change your books. Trust me, I am an expert. Your books have a lot of great things, but we have to change some of them so that we can get you published. So Tracy, what did I say? Yes, after 13 years, I will do whatever she says. So I did everything she said. And then I delivered the work to her, and she got really mad at me and said, I can't sell this. And I was like, oh my God, I just did everything you wanted me to do. And I all of a sudden realized, I'll never forget where I was in my living room when I had this epiphany, and I realized, oh my God, I was willing to sell my soul, totally change what was inherently beautiful just to get it published. And then I made a decision in that moment. I said, I would rather go to my grave with my books intact, with the joy that I had when I created them and the happiness that they brought me, than to change them just because some person told me I had to do that in order to get it published. Within a month of making that decision, that declaration, I found 3 publishers in Japan who were fighting over my books. And that's where my books were first published, in Japanese. But I've had many times in my life where that exact moment has come to me again. Another time it happened was actually at Rancho La Puerta. I'd only taught there for a year or two, and one of the gentlemen in my class noticed that I had this ability to get people to follow me. He said, you're like a guru. People want to be wherever you are. And I had just started teaching, and I spent most of my life as a hermit. I don't know what you're talking about, but all right. And he said, Leslie, you're doing it all wrong, though. You're really talented. You're really good at these workshops, but you need to be a businesswoman. You need to get email addresses. You need to find out what your people want. You need to stay in contact with them. You have to have this whole marketing plan. And I did the same thing. I said, yes, you're right. I need to do what you're telling me, because in order to make a living, in order to be successful, I've got to have this business side of me. I just can't be doing whatever I want. And guess what happened, Tracy? I did everything he asked. The next time I went to teach at Rancho La Puerta, it's the only time in my life that the class was a complete failure. I taught the same exercises that I always do, but I was different. I was coming in there now with an intention that was never there before. Before it was just, I want to play with you and give you everything I've got because I believe in me and I believe in you. And this is going to be fun. No attachment to an outcome. As soon as I had an attachment to an outcome, everything went south. And I called the guy up after that one class and I said, I'm sorry, you're probably 100% right, but I can't do it. And he was willing to financially back me. And I've had to make this decision. It's come at least 3 or 4 times. And I think for me, the lesson is that I look at myself like an instrument, and I am creatively putting things out that are pure. And when I'm teaching, people can tell that I don't want anything from you. The minute you want something from your audience, whether you're a book writer or a teacher or whatever, you're in trouble then, because it's no longer coming from this authentic, pure place. And that's where people with manifesting get into trouble. The minute you're yearning or you're really wanting something, you're actually repelling the very thing that you want. So it's very tricky, because of course I wanted financial stability. Of course I would have liked to have had more money. Of course, I mean, all these things are still
Right.
true, but how do you stand in your truth and be authentic and allow everything you want to come to you rather than you going towards it?
I think it's one of those things that's so challenging, right? Because, I'm allowing my new age lingo to come out, which everybody who knows me knows is there anyway. It's part of who I am. But like, I think the universe sends us various opportunities, both to help us along our journey and also to help us learn about ourselves and grow, right? And because the thing is, you did meet people who did get you and who could handle the business aspects of taking your work and bringing it to the wider world. But I think, like, what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that if you try to force it to be like other people, or if you try to make it about, the money, instead of just instead of making it about the work and your intention and your connection with other people feel that, and things just don't, and we feel that, and it doesn't feel right. I think people who are really in tune with some connection greater than themselves, to something greater than themselves, just it does something to us that's really uncomfortable when we try to make it all about, quote, success or money, right? We step out of the flow when we do that. You stepped back into the flow.
I've had to every time, because literally as soon as I get off track with this, I get into big trouble right away. Now, that's probably not true for most people, but for me, it's definitely true. There are lots of people right now who are multimillionaires doing astrology and workshops and teaching online, and it's become like a formula. And right now, everyone gets in their Instagram and in their Facebook or email, someone's selling you something all the time. Are you noticing that? It's like exhausting. Like, here's another class, here's another program to do. And we're being bombarded by all of our friends and everybody we know with another offering. And it's okay, but I think we're all getting exhausted from this. And I'm sort of living my life trying to pull back from all of that and waiting for people to come to me and say, Leslie, hey, we want to do this because this is great. And then I send out an announcement, I'll do it. And then it's different. It's like, there's like a gathering of people who are requesting something, as opposed to me looking for it from other people.
So I want to come back to something you said a few minutes ago, because I think this is really important. You're a person who was, people didn't get your art and people tried to make you do something different, people and your children's books. And yet when you got in the flow, it just, it came together, you found the right people, and you've sold over 2 million copies of your book. So tell me, what is it, first of all, that you think people connect to in your books? Because I think your books are absolutely wonderful. And I'm encouraging people to go to your website after and take a look, because they're just adorable and engaging and creative. But what do you think people connect to in your books?
It's the purity that's in them. On every single page of every single book I've ever created, there will be something you've never seen or thought of before. So they're very whimsical. They're very quirky. My design company is called McGuirk's Quirks Design Company. One of the books I'm proudest of is called Wiggins Learns His Manners. It's a book about a little chocolate lab who goes to the Four Seasons restaurant in New York and learns about how to be a polite puppy. And it's very funny. A lot of adult humor in there, even though it's a children's book. And then another book that's really amazing is called If Rocks Could Sing. It took me 10 years to find every letter of the alphabet in rock formation. So this book, I feel like, was created by nature, Mother Nature, and I just happened to find them. But it's an extraordinary book about how enchanting this world can be. And if you can learn how to look at things differently, the world becomes a lot more interesting. And that's one thing I definitely know is true about me, is that I have kept that little 5-6-year-old little girl very much alive. I still remember exactly how I was thinking at that age, and I really haven't veered off too much from that. And if I ever am around 5 and 6-year-olds, they always, every time, Tracy, they come up to me and they say things like, "You're not like other adults." And I said, "Yeah, don't tell anybody." I could still play with Barbie dolls and cars and be perfectly happy. I don't think many adults could say that, but I can totally go back there. And I think what I can do when I'm teaching these workshops is get people to remember what it felt like to be a playful, innocent child who you think anything is possible when you're a kid.
You do. And it, it strikes me, you are somebody who has remained in contact with your inner child, and you have nurtured and cared for that inner child. And I think that's something important for all of us, but especially if our own childhoods weren't filled with, the psychological term would be appropriate mirroring. The parent or the caregiver who said, "Great job, Leslie. Oh, I love that you're using, those colors so beautifully in your drawing." And it doesn't mean that it's a perfect rendering of, the Eiffel Tower. It means that it is playful, and it is wonderful because it's yours. And allowing ourselves to nurture that inner child, right? We don't have to wait for other people to fill that need. And when we are kind to ourselves and accepting of ourselves and playful, our creativity really does flow differently. We feel more in the flow of life.
Yeah, but the problem, Tracy, is that if you never got it, you really don't know how to give it to yourself.
Yeah, you really do. It is a journey of learning how to do it. Absolutely.
Right. And that's why I'm really an expert at tricking people into doing it without them knowing that it's happening. So, because I realize most people are going to be thinking, well, how can I give it to myself when I never got it? Like people talk about, you're not going to find love in your life until you learn to love yourself. And that drives me crazy when people say that. I mean, part of that is true, but there are very, very few of us who feel that unconditional love for ourselves, especially if we've had a tough childhood. And it's something that's a process of learning how to like the fact that you're quirky, you're different, you're not perfect. That comes with time, and it's something people do have to work at. But usually, people don't often accept people who are a little different.
I'm hoping that there's at least a subset of us who are doing just that and aren't trying to put everybody in a box.
I think it's better. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's always going to be people who are like, get back in that box,
Yes.
but we're just going to put them off to the side. I want to ask you, can you talk a little bit about, manifesting your work being in department stores in Tokyo? Because I think that is, again, it's not that you were feeling every day everything is perfect and easy and everything, and my self-esteem is perfect and all that, not that that's not even a real thing anyway, but despite the struggles and despite, the feelings of like, oh, I don't know, should I be doing this? You actually, something shifted in you. And I really believe you attracted this incredible deal. Like, I can only imagine walking through department stores in Tokyo and seeing, my creations on everything. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how that came to pass and what that felt like for you.
So I've told you I didn't draw very much after Miss Pritchard got mad at me for the belly button. So I didn't really take art classes, never thought of myself as an artist. But when I was in my 20s, my parents had this cocktail party and this couple was there and they saw me in the kitchen drawing something. I mean, I would draw, but I wouldn't show it to anybody. And I never took really many, like I said, art classes. So this woman saw my little drawings and she said, oh, these are cute. We're starting a refrigerator magnet company. Would you draw some little bunnies and rabbits on these little tiles? And she started to pay me money for them. And all of a sudden, Tracy, the weirdest thing happened. This was the first refrigerator magnet company in the world. They didn't even exist before this.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I never even told you that story, I don't think. So all of a sudden, I'm an artist and I'm making money doing art because
and
of this.
How old are you at this point?
I was 18, 19, 20 maybe. I was young. And then I thought, oh my God, this is an incredible way to make money. I guess I'm an artist because people are buying these little magnets. And then they started to mass produce them. And then I started to get, I said, well, I'm going to be a salesperson for this company. So all of a sudden I was making more money than the owners because I was making an artist commission and a sales commission. So I thought when I graduated from college, I had studied writing. I that's one thing I felt pretty confident in, that I was a writer. And I thought, all right, well, I guess I'm an artist because I'm doing these refrigerator magnets. And I know I'm a writer. So I combined the two and did these children's picture books, which then got rejected over and over again. And I decided, all right, that's not going to work. But I realized that was a wonderful way to make a living. You do artwork and you make money for what you make. So I then decided to do T-shirt designs. My parents were disgusted with me because they thought I should go get a job in advertising. If you want to be a writer, that's what you do, or work for a newspaper. I said, no, I want to put my little animals on T-shirts. So I was selling them out of the back of my car, basically living on the poverty level. And I was also trying to travel by working with Earthwatch, doing T-shirt designs for them. And I said, look, I'll do a T-shirt design for you as a fundraiser if you let me go on some of your trips working with scientists around the world. So I worked with dolphins in Hawaii and bats in Spain. And literally, I did not have, I can remember at times being in the grocery store crying because I felt like I shouldn't buy bread that was 10 cents more. That was, I shouldn't have spent 10 cents on something that I didn't really have the money for. I mean, that's how close to the poverty level I was living. So then a girlfriend said, write to Glamour magazine. They're doing a whole thing on environmentalists doing interesting things with their life. So I wrote to them. And they wrote back immediately and said, we want to do a story about you. So all of a sudden, my environmental T-shirt designs are in Glamour magazine. And my life was forever changed from that moment on. Somebody from Takashimaya, which is like the Neiman Marcus of Japan, was traveling from New York to Tokyo. They saw this Glamour magazine article. They liked my artwork. They called me up and they said, we want to make you famous in Japan. So all of a sudden I was flown first class to Tokyo, and they had an 11-year plan where they were going to make me famous first as an environmentalist and as an artist. And then after making me famous, then they were going to start producing these designs. So they made 1,500 designs with my illustrations on them. So, and I did do the redecoration of the Tokyo Disneyland Hotel, but you would go into any department store in Japan and it would be called The World of Leslie McGuirk, everything from aprons to slippers to bedspreads, pajamas. And this is, remember, I went from like zero to, yeah, this was pre-internet. Yeah, this was well before the internet. Exactly. So, and then eventually my books were published in Japanese. But then when that ended, I had to reinvent myself again because, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? I went from selling t-shirts out of the back of my car to becoming famous in Japan. None of the biggest things that have ever happened to me came about because I went after them.
Right.
Every single thing came to me. And then my girlfriend said, you should write to Glamour magazine. And then I did. And so you follow the breadcrumbs. But for me, it's all about being present and opening up every door that comes. And whenever I've tried to open up a door, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to work for me, which is very frustrating because I don't get to go from A, B, C to D. I have to go A, F, Q, Z, W, and then I get to where I want to go. But I am 100% convinced that I am not in charge of my life. Like, I think there is a higher path and a higher power that is totally directing me. And my job is to get out of my own way. So my motto for my life is to stop thinking and let things happen. Very, very difficult for me.
I mean, and as you talk about that, I'm thinking again, of being open and receptive and willing to do the work that you need to do, right? You had to agree to go to Japan. You had to get on a plane. You still had to create a certain number of designs. You had to write to Glamour magazine. So I wanted to be clear to people who are listening that it's not that what you're saying is not, I'm going to sit on my couch, with the lights out and just hope something happens. That's not it. You've been creating and you've been open to opportunity. And when you've been open and in your creative zone, these opportunities have presented. And I think you've intuited which ones to really go after, because I think what you're saying and what you said before is that, the ones that feel like, this feels like putting myself in a box or just chasing the money or trying to make myself like this hardcore business person, which doesn't resonate with you. You found ways to be you and still pursue these things, these opportunities that have presented to you.
Yes. And I have to, I'm always going to be tested when I'm selling my soul out for money I have to be very careful. And again, it's that feeling tone. Does this make me happy or does this make me sad? It's just like dating. If they make you happy, go with it. If every time you're around them, you don't miss them and they're not that much fun, your body's telling you that's not your person. It's the same. And we just have to pay attention and be patient. But it's hard because I'm impatient and sometimes things don't happen in the timing that I want. And that's frustrating. But yeah, it is for a lot of people. And it's just about being in the moment, doing the best that you can. And a lot of people, as an astrologer, people often ask me, so Leslie, are you looking at what's going to happen to you for the next 3 to 6 months? And I always tell people, I could look, but to me, it really doesn't matter because every day I wake up and I try to do the best I can. I'm always putting a lot of energy out into the world to make things happen. And that's because I enjoy that. And I enjoy creating and I enjoy changing people's lives. That is such a thrill for me to know that in 1 hour I can change someone's life, because I look at my own life and I think, wow, if someone had helped me when I was a lot younger, it probably would have shaved off a lot of trauma.
It's so, but if I look at your career, even with all of the, the rejections, it's pretty amazing that you persevered as you did.
I agree.
It makes your story that much more compelling, right? Because when things seem hopeless to keep on going, look at what's happened since then. You're not only a successful children's book author, though, you're a successful author of books for adults about I'm
Which
thinking
is
The
the
Power of
astrology book,
Mercury, right?
The Power of Mercury.
Right.
Yes.
And I wonder if you want to talk about that because a lot, it's kind of funny, like these astrological periods of Mercury in retrograde, and that's very stressful for a lot of us. I can always tell when it's here because I feel like emails and every communication, everything seems to go wonky, or deliveries get misdelivered, and it's just the whole shebang. But what you have said is, no, you don't have to think of that period in that way. So talk a little bit about yourself as an astrologer, how you wound up doing this, but also about your book.
Okay, so I wrote The Power of Mercury because most people feel the way you do about Mercury retrograde. They all freak out. And what is important is you need to know if you were born during Mercury retrograde, and I was, 20% of the population was. And what it means is that the way you feel, Tracy, when it's retrograde, I feel like that 80% of the time. Can you imagine if I let it get under my skin, what kind of condition and the amount of stress I'd be under all the time? I'm used to living in wonky land. That is normal for me. So when it goes direct, it's when I can actually move forward more easily. But it doesn't mean I can't move forward during Mercury retrograde. It just means I have to just go slower. I have to be more patient. And I always equate it to being the times when you can put your car in reverse, and someone could say, well, that's not good. I'm trying to get, from New York to Connecticut, and I don't want to go in reverse. Well, if you're stuck in your garage, you're going to be thrilled you have a reverse gear. So it's not bad. There's nothing bad in anyone's chart. There's nothing bad with even weather. Whatever we're getting is just part of a divine plan, I think. And our job is to just learn how to flow with what is. And as long as we're in that place of flow, I believe we're all going to be fine.
So tell our listeners about how you wound up getting into astrology and how you've learned this, not only about Mercury retrograde, but also just generally, like how astrology fits into guiding people in their everyday lives.
So at the same time that woman saw me doing the little drawing of the rabbit and hired me to do refrigerator magnets, at that same time, my mother heard one of her elderly friends had a daughter who was an astrologer, and my mother heard her lecture at the women's club, and she made an appointment for me. And so it was in Greenwich Village in Manhattan, and I went, and this woman, I was 18, 19 years old. She looked at this chart and she said, oh my God, what are you doing? You are so creative. I said, well, when I'm just drawing little rabbits right now for a refrigerator magnet company. She said, no, you're huge. She said, most people are born with a wristwatch on their arm, and you've got Big Ben. You're going to be world famous. You're going to know famous male artists. You're going to travel all over the world. You're going to be extremely well known for what you do. You got to get busy. You're getting a very late start. What the heck? Are you doing nothing with this? She was like, I felt like she was grabbing me by the scruff of the neck and going like, what? Oh my God. And she said, thank God you got here just in time. A couple of years after now, it'd be too late. And she put a lot of fear into me too, because she said, look, if you don't stay on this path, she said, you could end up on the back of a Hells Angels motorcycle looking for love and adventure in all the wrong places. What's really weird is at one point I actually dated a professional motorcycle racer. So like even that part came true. But she was right about being discovered by an overseas company and knowing well-known, famous, creative men. I mean, it was unbelievable. So at age 19, I started studying astrology. And then sorry, my dog's bothering you?
No, actually, I would love it if you brought them in.
Okay, hold on. Let me just go get them. Guys, come in. Come in.
Leslie's a big dog lover and pet person, as I am. So hopefully the pet people listening will be super excited to meet Leslie's
There's
dog.
one of them.
Oh my goodness.
You can edit this part out. Wait a minute. Oh, there. This is Sky Baby. Isn't he cute?
Oh my goodness. How old is he?
He's like 8 or 9.
Oh my goodness. He's adorable. And I see another little guy in the background.
Yeah, she's probably up on the couch. Oh,
Not
Yeah.
yet.
All right. So, okay, back to astrology. Sorry, you can edit that part out.
That's totally fine.
So, what happened is that I started studying astrology because I thought, oh my God, what if she's right? I better do everything she said, because if she's right, I'm going to have an amazing life. Back then, I didn't think my life looked very amazing. And so I never wanted to be an astrologer, and I had no interest in doing this as a profession. But Rancho La Puerta, again, the magical Rancho La Puerta, about 10 years ago, I taught.
Place.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. I taught my first class of astrology there. And in the audience was a well-known literary agent who came up to me afterwards and said, Leslie, I don't even believe in astrology, but this is what you should be doing. Forget children's books. I want to be your agent. I said, wait a minute. I don't have a website. I don't have a business card. I don't do this. This was just like for fun. I was doing this. She said, I don't care. You are going to be a very well-known astrologer. So she pretty much groomed me for 2 years and sold my first book to HarperCollins, which, getting a book published by a major publisher is almost unheard of these days. Is very, very difficult. So again, came to me, right? Did you see the pattern here? My friend with the Glamour magazine. What?
But you were doing the work.
Oh my God, yes.
Absolutely. Yes. You were out there and you were doing what you felt called to do.
Yes.
And that attracted, and being yourself, and that attracted these opportunities. And I think that's amazing. Sorry, not to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, it is an amazing story. And and same thing even with the rock book. I just was collecting the rocks. I didn't have any plans for them. And then one of my girlfriends who's a photographer said, well, you need to do this, make it into a book. So she made it into a MacBook back in the day, people used to do those photographic Apple books. And so I thought, this is pretty cool. It wasn't my idea. It was her idea to make it into a book. And so I went to New York and just walked up and down the aisles and found a publisher. I had to get to New York and show it. But you just do what you love and allow the world to surprise you. That's basically how I live my life. And is that a frustrating way to live sometimes? Extremely, because I'm waiting for miracles all the time and they keep happening. So I'm going to stick with it. Whenever I try to do the opposite, Tracy, it is not pretty. Oh my God. When I try to live my life like a quote unquote normal person and make technical decisions without allowing this sort of magical thing to keep happening, it never works for me. So
I really think it's you allowing yourself to be in your flow.
Yes.
You allowing yourself to honor yourself, who you are as Leslie McGuirk and the human being, but also as a soul, right? Your soul feels called to do certain things. And again, you put the effort in to do them. It's not that you're just waiting for everything to happen, but you can hear my stomach growling. Sorry.
That's right.
You honor yourself and you honor what you're here to do. And when you do that, that kind of opens up the flow. And I completely hear you about the feeling of impatience and, wanting the universe to kind of help us do things on our time schedule and in the way we imagine. And it's so hard to get out of our own way and just, step back into the flow, but you've done it again and again and again. I've never seen anyone who's done it so many times.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the other thing I want to tell the story about are the wild horses that I work with in Utah. Glad. Yeah. So I was teaching at Red Mountain Spa, and I was told by one of the women I had met there who was hiking with me that they have an event where you can go meet these wild Mustangs. And she was going to go. She said, you want to go with me? I said, I can't. I'm working and I have to leave tomorrow. And I'm allergic to horses. But when I was a kid, I loved horses. They were my favorite animal. I used to go horseback riding. And then I became so highly allergic, Tracy, that I literally couldn't be around them at all. Like I would feel like I was going to die. Like my throat would close up. So she went without me, came back crying, running to my room saying, you have to come. You have to come. I have to bring you to these wild horses. I said, what are you talking? I barely know you. And I'm leaving tomorrow and I'm working. And you just went with the whole group. She said, I don't care. I'm going to call these two ladies. You have to go. And so I did. I bought Claritin and I bought a mask. And I went. For some reason, these two women allowed me in, which, by the way, they told me later they never, ever do that for one person. So I got there, and Tracy, I was standing in the middle of southern Utah with 30 wild horses running around me. And then one of them came over right to me. Horses can read energy. They know exactly who you are. Absolutely. So this one horse came to me, and they had me work with this one horse for a while. And it was like I was dancing with this horse. And again, there's no bridle, there's no saddle, there's no rope. Totally wild creature with me, a wild human. And I left there. Oh, at the end, they had me hug the horse, where you put your human heart right next to the horse's heart. Human heart, it's about that big. Horse heart, it's like the size of a basketball.
Wow.
So this woman was waiting, who had driven me there. Thank God she had driven me there. I got in her car, and Tracy, I could barely walk. I could barely talk. Something happened to me. It was like my heart or my entire being cracked open. Got back to my room, and I cried nonstop for 2 hours, and I have no idea what I was crying about. I got on the airplane the next day to fly home. And when I got back, I remember my mom was still alive at the time. And she said, Leslie, what happened to you? I said, I don't know. I said, if I could go back to Utah tomorrow, I would. I said, I feel like I need to dedicate my life to helping these animals, because what they did to me, if they can do that to humanity, if they can break people open, if they can transfer this heart love thing, I don't know what it is, but I said it's the equivalent of being around the Dalai Lama or Princess Diana or Mother Teresa or Desmond Tutu, these enlightened, big-hearted beings, where we don't get to be around things that are that pure. We don't get to be around things that are that at that level of a vibration. So got home and really couldn't talk about it for about 2 weeks. I still to this day do not entirely know what happened to me, but I called up the two women who own the horses and I said, listen, I don't know if you remember me, but I was the one who was there alone. They said, yeah, that was really unusual. We were worried about you when you left. You could barely walk or talk. I said, I know. I need you to know that I think what you're doing is incredible and I want to help you. What do you need? And they said they have been waiting because they wanted to find someone who could help bring really special, more enlightened people to meet these horses, not turn it into Disney World. Right. They'd had many, many people try to do to them what that guy at Rancho La Puerta wanted to do to me. You need to do this, 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 this. And he lost the part about the magic. So I have a good friend, Barb Groth, who started the Nomadic School of Wonder, which is all about artist-inspired trips to places of wonder. And I told her about the Mustangs. She said, Leslie, let's do it. So she totally trusted me. We brought our first group of, I think, 10 or 12 people. So we brought a bunch of people there over the years. Of course, through COVID, we couldn't do it, but I'll be there again in May, and we'll do another one in October. But if anyone's interested,
May of this year or May of next
year? This year. I'm going to be going in 10 days, basically.
Wow.
So it'll be like my 6th or 7th time, I think, bringing a group. And I would say 80% of the people who come have an experience like I did, where you are forever changed by what the horses can teach you. It is so wild because it's not regular equine therapy. There's a lot of that. These horses are literally a preserved herd. And we as humans don't get to encounter the wild unless you're with wild dolphins, or maybe if you're in Africa with the wild, the apes. But when does a human ever get to be with something purely wild? So I think that's one of the biggest gifts. And I think if we can connect more with the earth and with the original sense of our own wildness, I think the healthier we become. But what's really crazy about this, I don't think I ever told you this part of the story. It's called the Wind Horse Foundation. It's a nonprofit, and I'm now pretty much dedicating a lot of my life to helping these women with this herd and giving it as a gift to humanity. So the Wind Horse Foundation, I said, why do you call it the Wind Horse Foundation? And they said, because there are these rare Tibetan prayer flags that have a horse in the middle. If you can believe it, I have been carrying in my wallet since I was 23 years old, a Wind Horse prayer flag that a children's book illustrator gave to me by the name of Paul Galdone. He was a very famous Hungarian illustrator who lived in Vermont, and he died. He was going to actually illustrate my first children's book with me, but the last time I saw him in Vermont, he gave me this Tibetan prayer flag with the wind horse on it. I didn't even know it had a horse on it until they said, the Wind Horse Foundation is named after these prayer flags. I opened up my wallet and I opened it up and I was like, oh my God, I've been carrying a wind horse prayer flag with me for almost my entire life.
You've had more synchronicities and more like incredibly powerful and unique encounters with people and animals, again, than anyone I've met.
And I haven't even told you half of them. So I have so many, I have proof, physical proof of miracles in the afterlife. And I need to write the book, Tracy. This is my biggest thing in my brain. And I'm so busy doing the readings right now. I know that sounds like an excuse, but it's hard for me to shift to, because it takes a lot of energy and time to write a book, but I need to write the book about my life, and that I need to write about these miracles because there have been so many of them. I mean, I even think the thing with Japan was a miracle.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Like what are the odds that somebody's reading Glamour magazine on a trip, from New York to Tokyo? What are the odds that I happened to be hiking with this woman and she connected with me and forced me to go to the horses? I was dragging my heels. I really didn't want to go. And now I'm not allergic to horses.
That is just wild. It really is. It really is. It really is.
My old lawyer, who was like a father figure to me, he recently died. And he said, because he did a lot of my legal contracts, he said, Leslie, you have the most unusual life of anybody. He said, nobody would believe that this is true. But he said, it keeps happening to you over and over and over again.
It's like a quirky, magical path.
Yeah, but I actually believe we're all supposed to have that too. Okay, but I have so stayed in the lane of the 5-6-year-old child that I think it happens to me more than probably other people. But I think it's the natural way. I think we're all supposed to be living that way.
So Leslie, I'm going to ask you something I wasn't planning on asking you. Don't get nervous.
Oh yeah, no.
Just teasing. But you've been talking about connecting with that 5 or 6-year-old child and allowing ourselves to be creative and playful. And that is such a part of what you do. Would you mind doing just a brief exercise, even though it's a podcast? Some people will just listen and some people will see the video, but that's something or something that people could do on their own to just get in touch with that creative part of themselves, even briefly. And if not, that's okay too.
Well, yeah, there are two things I can think of. The number one question I would ask everyone is to think about what they want it to be when they were 5 or 6 years old or 7 or 8. Whatever you want it to dream about becoming is a real big clue into who you are as an adult. So I wanted to be a veterinarian. It doesn't mean I'm supposed to be a vet. It just means animals are my thing. I must have animals in my life. It's the ingredient that makes me happy. If you wanted to be a teacher, it means you must be teaching. If you want it to be a doctor, it means you must be healing. You just have to figure out that thing. And the way to figure that out, if you're on track with your life purpose, is see if your dream of wanting to be an actress or a ballet dancer or whatever, are you putting anything of that into your life now with intention? And if you aren't, pay attention, because if you want it to be a dancer and you're not dancing, something's wrong with your path. You're not quite right. But I do have one exercise that is tricky because I can't finish it with them, but what they can do is email me and I will tell them part 2. But I want
to make it easy on you.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's up to you, but I'm not sure if it would be great to have a zillion people emailing you.
Okay.
Unless you want them to, and then they should. It's up to you.
Well, you can edit this part out if you want to. This part of the discussion. So but I can't give you part 2 right now, but it's a really important exercise. I'll tell you what the exercise is, and then you can help me decide.
Okay.
So what you do is you go find something in nature that speaks to you, a flower, a rock, a leaf, a stick. I don't care what it is. It has to be from the natural world. And you sit down and you look at it as if your life depends upon looking at it that carefully. Look at it nonstop from every angle, every viewpoint, and then start writing to it. Write down what you see, what you notice. Talk to it as if it was a person and you're like having a conversation with it, or interview it, or whatever comes out. If you all of a sudden start writing about your grandmother, I don't care, but just let it come out and write nonstop for at least 15, 20 minutes. That's part 1. I can't tell you what part 2 is, but that's what we have to figure out how to do that.
Let me ask you, is it, so you and I can figure that out, but if people do this exercise, so finding something in nature, a rock, a leaf, a stick, something, a flower, really take it in as if you're really seeing and experiencing it and paying attention to it as
if your life depended upon it. Yeah. Like notice everything and wonder about, figure out why did you pick this thing? What has it been? If it's been a rock in your yard, wonder what has its life been like? What do you think has happened to it? What do you think it feels? What do you think it's thinking about?
So asking it in the letter, I wonder what I wonder what you're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you could just give you an example. It could be like, okay, leaf, I picked you because you're this bright, beautiful pink flower, and I love the way you have these yellow little things in the center. And I wonder if you ever worry about the rain coming or what's going to happen when you lose your petals. And does it bother you that insects come and hang around you? And I wonder what it feels like to be on the end of a long stick, and talk about, I don't know that's one way of going. You just whatever comes to mind, but
it come to mind.
Whatever comes to mind, keep looking at it. And what does it remind you of? Whatever. And Tracy, what we could do is you could do this exercise, and then I can tell you what part 2 is, and then you can help me figure out how we do part 2 for the audience.
We could post it, or we could maybe have a link.
You can't post it.
On your website that people,
because you'll understand why we can't post it.
Okay.
They literally have to do the exercise, because if you find out part 2, you can't do part 1.
Okay.
I don't know I can't explain it because it's impossible, but that's where the magic comes in. So Tracy, you just do it, and then you read it. You'll read it to me, just like a friend. You're going to call me up and read it to me, and then I'll tell you part 2.
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Good.
And I want to be mindful of your time, but of anything else you want to share about what you're up to, or that you'd like people to check out, or where they can find out more about your work and you?
So, yeah, my website, of course, LeslieMcGuirk.com. But I think the number one thing I'm most interested in doing right now is teaching people how to read astrology charts.
Okay.
So I do online webinars that I'd love people to sign up for. Or the other thing I want to start doing is start moving around the country. And let's say you have 10 friends who want to learn astrology. I'm looking for people who want to help get 10 people together where I could fly in for a weekend and just teach people for a weekend. I'm trying to do more of that. I think that's healthy for me and it's more fun. I'm tired of Zoom.
I can totally understand that. But I'm so grateful that you Zoomed with me today.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's fun to see you.
And meet your pets. Yay.
Yeah. You met one of them at least.
I know. I saw another one in the background. But Leslie, again, thank you.
You're welcome.
Much. And people can find out more about you by going to LeslieMcGuirk.com. And I will post in the show notes on YouTube more about you and how people can reach you. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Always great to see you. I wish it was real life next time. Okay.
I know. So I want to thank you. And again, everyone, this is Unpacking Possibility. If you like it, please hit like and share and subscribe. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.